Hey guys, Terry Red here, and in this video, I am going to be talking all about my DOF Config Creator sheet, a tool that me and DDH69 originally created for adding addressable LEDs to Pinball FX3 and Future Pinball, but now I've given it a complete overhaul to include full DOF, addressable LEDs, and all the sources that you would ever need for creating effects, letters, characters, shapes, almost anything you'd ever want. Pre-set up in templates, easy for you guys to use. You don't even have to understand how the commands work. It could be as simple as copy one line, paste it onto another spot or another sheet, and then change the trigger and the color to what you want, and that's it. Like, it could be that simple. So we're going to be going through talking about how this works, everything you can find on here, and then either in this video or another video, I'll be doing an actual simple example for a ROM-based table for Visual Pinball so that you guys can get a basic idea of how this works. So before you watch this video and attempt to do any of this stuff that I'm going to show you, you need to watch a few videos or have an understanding of how DOF works in the first place. So I recommend watching this video first, the DOF Config Tool tour video I made. It goes through the basics of what DOF Config Tool is and how it works and how you're going to be working with it. And then after that, watch DOF MX LEDs and creating table configs, the basics. So that way, this explains more about how it works in the table scripts, how commands work, and how addressable LEDs and DOF all work and how they're different. So watch these two videos first before going through this video and trying to create anything. Okay, guys? Very important. It'll make your lives so much easier. All right, the DOF Config Creator sheet. So first, I'm just going to explain everything you're going to find on here, and then I'll go through more of a detailed description of how we actually use this thing. So the first tab you're going to see is lookups. You guys don't touch this. You just ignore it. It's just used for functions for the other sheets. So just leave this alone. Don't modify it. Don't remove anything or add anything. Just leave it alone. For this one, this is going to be your Visual Pinball table template. You can use this as a starting point that will have all the main pinball devices or functions ready to go with addressable LED effects and also standard DOF stuff. So that way you can just remove what you don't need or add to this. And then all you're going to need to do is change the trigger that you need to trigger the action and the color that you need. So, you know, it's a whole lot of stuff that's on here. You can see I got addressable LEDs for all sorts of stuff. And I've got standard DOF here. And the idea is all you're going to do is you're going to be making those simple changes I mentioned, like with these guys here. Your triggers in your color, and then it's going to create the DOF commands over here. And then it's going to assemble everything down here. So that's the basics of what the template is, but I'll get into more of that after. And then I got a Future Pinball example. It's basically the same thing. The only difference is the triggers used in Future Pinball are actual specifically reserved ones for a standard that I've used for all my tables. So this is much easier for Future Pinball to start with because most of it's ready to go. And I'll explain more about the reserve triggers in the other sheet here. So for this one, this is our addressable LED effects and animations. You know, a whole bunch of them that you can just use for anything. It doesn't have to just be pinball. It could be anything. They're just a whole bunch of different effects. It could be words. It could be flashers. It could be strobes and beacons. It could be stars, electrical effects, sparkly comets, explosions, machine guns, you know, a whole bunch of stuff that you can use as either a complete effect that's ready to go, or you can use it as an example to create your own custom effects. So these are for you guys to just, you know, you can just copy and then paste it into our template, and it's that simple. So same thing here with this tab for DOF effects. This is like standard DOF toys. You know, like your everything that's not addressable LEDs basically is in here. You know, they're just reference examples, but I do have examples for your 5 flashers, for RGB 5 flasher bars, so that you could do animations of like left to right, right to left, center to outer, outer to center. All the stuff you've seen in my videos, you can use them here. Much easier doing it this way, because trying to add all this in manually is a pain in the butt. So that's what that one's for. The Pinball MX, that's basically just kind of like the other templates, but it's just addressable LED effects for standard pinball stuff. A couple extra examples for the slingshots and the strobes, the beacons, so you can use this if you want. There may be something a little different for you. Now, this one here is for what you need to use if you want to add words or characters to the back matrix. So if you want to do something like this, to either have custom words, and it can be more than 5 letters. You can do whatever you want, but you have to make your own commands. And I got stuff set up for that to emulate flashers or other things. That's what this sheet is for, because you will need to use either the actual entry, or you can use a variable in the command back in your template over here. And you would do that in here somewhere, right? So that's there if you want to do that stuff. So the triggers. So this is basically just reserved trigger numbers for Future Pinball and Pinball FX2 and FX3 that me and DDH69 just established when we were starting to add this stuff to those tables. So these are the numbers that you would use with the Future Pinball template for these effects. So that's why I set this template up as a starting point if you want to ever do a Future Pinball update. So now this one here is a Future Pinball DOF links DOF commands. These are the table script commands you would use with DOF links in a Future Pinball table, and the triggers for each of these events, work with the triggers we've reserved. So that they're all just to make it easy to copy and paste from if you're doing an update. Now, the other thing I have on here is actual real examples that I've done for tables. So the Stranger Things Stranger Edition, this is my actual addressable LEDs in DOF config I created. So you can see there's a whole lot of stuff on here, So for an original visual pinball table, this is an excellent example. It has almost everything you could ever use for an example in here. And as you can see, when everything's created and all done, then it all gets compiled down to the bottom to just copy from here and paste into DOF Config Tool. So even if you have a table that already has basic DOF, again, you can use this for adding just addressable LEDs to it. So this is very handy. So that's one example for a visual pinball original table. And now I have an example for a ROM-based table, one that uses a PinMame ROM, where you have to use the triggers that are being output from PinMame for switches, solenoids, and that would be these guys here. The switches, solenoids, lights. This is an example to show you how I did that for transformers for addressable LEDs. So this is another great example. And then finally, I have a Future Pinball example for Star Wars Death Star Ultimate. This is for addressable LEDs, and this was a really good example for lots of cool custom effects. Like there's lots of neat stuff. And if you guys wonder how any of this stuff will look when you see this template, then just go to my YouTube channel and you'll find it on here. Like here's the Star Wars one right there. And Stranger Things Stranger Edition is right here. So just watch those videos and then you get an idea of how those work. So that's it. And then we're going to be doing a Star Wars Data East example when we create this sheet. But I wanted you to see what all the things are before I get heavily into the more details of what everything is. All right, so we have our DOF Config Creator table template. How do we use this? How does it work? So I'm going to go through all that now. So at its heart, what this thing is doing is it's creating all your DOF config commands with their parameters and assembling them all in a way so that you can copy and paste them to the DOF Config Tool much easier than doing everything from here or doing it from a notepad and not being able to know what the heck you're working with or messing something up or whatever. So This is making all of that much easier. So what are you actually doing on this sheet? All right, so look, I'm going to keep it very simple. The only thing you're adding or removing anything from is between and under the red lines. So I'll show you what I mean by that. The formula line, this one here, so that's the very top of anything that you're going to be doing anything with. So in other words, you're not going to be doing anything from this line and above. Like as far as adding or removing like a row or anything like that, you do not touch any of that. You leave those alone. The only thing you can do is change the text up here if you want. That's fine. But anything else from this red line and above, you do not change or modify. It's very important or you will mess this sheet up. Now, anything that's below it, all the way down, and before this final red line is what you are actually going to be making any changes. So between the red is what you're doing. So that's these guys here, right? So all these cells in here is what you're actually working with. You're not making any changes as far like you're not entering or removing anything in here in the green cells. You will actually just be copying the top line and pasting a formula to all the cells underneath. It's easy. I'll show you how to do it, but you don't do that until you're all done and you're ready to test and use your configs. But that's the very last thing you'll be doing. So don't worry about that. So just remember, between the red lines is what you're working with. So I'll go from left to right to explain what we're using here. The bottom line is we're trying to make our DOF configs on the right side here. That's the bottom line of what everything under the red is trying to do. And a DOF config at its basic is a trigger, a color, a time, and the parameters. It doesn't have to have all those things. It depends on if it's a light or not a light, or if you even need a time for it. It totally depends. They're all going to be different. But that's the basics of what a DOF command is. Now, if you need more information on that stuff, how these commands work and how you can customize them yourself, then I included a link here, the DOF R3 wiki, and that brings you to this page here where you can find out all the information of how all of that stuff works. All right. And this is the base. This is DOF right here. This page right here is everything you need to know to add these commands in here. It really is. You know, it seems simple, but there's a ton that you can do with it. So that's what this is all about for addressable LEDs, right? And to make it all easier. So in order to make our commands, all right, we start from left to right for all these columns here. All right, so I'm going to describe what they each do. So here is our function column. This side here. All this is text, a description of what your action is. You can put whatever you want in there. As you can see, I just put basic pinball descriptions of what the device is or the effect for the device is. So that's all this is here. In this column here, this is your DOF toy type. So it's a drop-down menu. You click on it, you choose what toy you're adding the effect to. So that's these guys here. These toys. So it's going to be whichever of these you're actually going to be adding a command to. So in this case, it's mostly addressable LEDs, as you can see. But if you have, let's say you wanted to insert another trigger or command, like you wanted to insert a whole bunch of stuff underneath of this, and then you don't have anything in that cell, like there's no drop-down menu. Well, that's easy to take care of. You just go over to DF Toys here, and you copy the drop down underneath because that's what that is, right? And then you just go to the cell and then you choose paste special data validation. And that's it. And then you can have a drop down menu for any of these here that way. So you got your function, you got your DOF toy. Now description here, that is basically just describing what the addressable LED effect is. It's, because unlike normal DOF toys, a shaker is a shaker. I mean, you don't need to describe what a shaker is. But addressable LEDs can be anything. It could be a bazillion different things. So this is a basic description of what the effect is like. Because you'll see for my DOF stuff in the bottom, I don't have anything, right? Except for like a start button that's flashing. But you know what I mean? Like that's what all the description is for. In this column, this is the first part of these here. Sorry, these four columns here are the information that we would make changes to based on the table. You know, the trigger we need and the color that you want to choose. So these are the ones that are going to affect our command over here. All right, they're going to be the actual content in this command. So the triggers is whatever trigger is being used by the table. If it's an original visual pinball table or a future pinball table or an EM visual pinball table, like an electromechanical, then it's always going to be an E trigger like you see here. If it's a ROM-based table that uses pin name, well, then it's going to be either an S. Here, actually, if you need to know what they are, you click up here. This is just for reference. So S types are for solenoids or flashers. L types are for lights. And W's are for switches. That's for pin name-based visual pinball tables only. Not for future pinball and not for visual pinball original /EM tables. For those, it's an E trigger. So if you're not sure, you know, what letter and value you're supposed to use, then you can look that up here. So that's your triggers. That could be a single trigger, or in this case, you can see it could be multiple triggers being used for this one effect, right? They just have to be separated by a pipe. So you got like E120 pipe, E121 pipe, E122 pipe. So what this basically means is this effect will trigger each time any of these effects are triggering. So that's what this is about. Now here we have our DOF color. So it's straightforward. If it's a light, an RGB light, then you pick what color you want, and that's it. Now you do have a drop-down menu here as well. So if you don't have a menu for some reason through all your copying and pasting showing up, then you just do the same thing. You copy from here, choose here, paste, where here, data validation. Okay. Now color 2, that's only used for if your command template over here calls for it. That's up to you guys if you want to create custom ones. This is just more for convenience. As an example, this effect here uses 2 colors. So this makes it easy that if I want to use this effect on another table, then I can copy this whole line and then I can just change the 2 colors to something completely different instead of me having to go into this whole command template here and change it, right? So that's what our colors are there for. Time, only if the effect calls for it. Now again, you guys aren't even changing any of this stuff if you're using the template or my effects templates here. Like you don't have to change any of that. So don't worry too much about that. It's mostly just the color and the trigger that you need to change. So that's the main stuff you have to worry about. Unless you do custom stuff, you're not dealing with anything else. Now this here, the command template, all this is basically the same as what you see over here. The only difference is instead of using our actual numbers and words, we use a string to represent what's in the columns here. So for example, this command here, string T. So you can see string T, that's a trigger. So that means the first thing it's going to show is the trigger. And you can see here, that's what it's showing. String 1, that's referring to color 1. So it's going to use this value as the next thing in the command line. String M, it's going to use the time, and that's going to be the next thing. And then everything after that is just a normal command parameter that for whatever effect you're creating or using, and that's the stuff that you would have to look up on here if you want to make a change. You don't have to. That's the whole point of why I made this sheet, so that you guys can use the basic stuff without having to know how to work any of that. All right. So that's the details of what all these guys are used for. Okay. And then as far as on the right side here, all right. So all those guys are used to generate your actual command here. You don't enter anything here. It does that after you've made your changes. So all of your commands are going to be here. So what this stuff over here is about is all of this is used to arrange all of these commands. See, like this is every tool, every DOF tool, config tool, toy. They're all there. It just basically takes your command and enters it into a cell for the right toy. And then you can see down here how they all get assembled. And then at the end, they all get assembled correctly to this bottom line. And then that bottom green line value gets copied here. All right, so it's basically taking it's basically, the way this works is it looks at what type of toy this is, and then it takes this command and pastes it under the correct column here based on the toy name all the way back here. So I know I hope that doesn't seem too complicated, but it's a way of making it easier for you guys. I'm just explaining this so that you guys understand what the heck's going on in here. All right. So now that I've gone through those details, the only other things I'll point out is, again, you can change the text up here if you want. That's about the only place you're going to do that. You've got DOF Config Tool link here and the other R3 wiki page. Very important because you're going to be using those. And then at the very bottom, this is our final line. So that's where everything gets assembled, and you won't be making any changes to anything down here whatsoever. You will not make any changes. You will not add lines. You will not remove lines. You will not do anything. All you're going to be doing down here is going to the first cell under the completed commands for your toy here, and you'll copy and paste the entire command to DOF Config Tool. And that's it. That's in a nutshell, that's how this sheet works. And I've used this for all my tables, like all the stuff I've added DOF or addressable LEDs. So in Stranger Things, Stranger Edition, you can see, like I've got all the addressable LEDs with the triggers they needed, the colors. They're all assembled here, including the DOF toys on this side, right? So I use, in this case, I used it for both. And for DOF, it's the same thing. You choose the toy type that you're going to be using. You would choose the trigger. And then if it has a light, in this case it doesn't, then you would enter that in there. Again, anything that does not need a value, you have to leave it blank. So like you can see here, like these are all RGB addressable LEDs. So they have lights here or colors here. Some have colors here, some don't. If it doesn't need anything here, do not enter anything in there. Same with the time. If you don't need something in there, you don't enter anything into there. So for any of these cells here, all right? Like these four in particular. Only enter something in there if you absolutely have to change it or it needs something. In the case where it's only using one color, you leave it blank. In a case where it doesn't need a time duration, you leave it blank. All right. So again, these templates are set up for you guys, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Just make the changes to the trigger and the color, and you're good to go. So I think that's a good explanation of all the details. So yeah, okay. So I think now I'm going to go through and show you how to copy and paste and then why it has to be done a certain way. All right. I know it's a lot of explanation, guys, but trust me, when you see how quick and easy it is without me talking about it, you're going to be like, oh, wow, okay, that's all I needed to know. I didn't have to listen to Terry Red go on forever. Well, believe me, there's lots of details I had to cover. So, okay. So we'll do that now.